justice. And I want to welcome and thank you all out there for attending this most important webinar with our most important guest today. This is part of our campaign from the Socialist Unity Party and the Solidarity with Donbass and Anti-Fascists in Ukraine to stop the war lies. The campaign started on the 27th, went through the 20th to the 27th, and it's going to culminate in actions on April 2nd. On this issue of Ukraine, as everybody knows, everything needs context. I'd like to give some of that with highlighting that with the lives of children. When the US goes to war, its main targets and its rate of killing those targets far exceeds any other country today. 2 years ago, I and my partner visited Hiroshima, accompanying our son going to college in Japan on scholarship. And we went to the Hiroshima Museum, where you'll learn the horrible details about one of the greatest war crimes in history, the dropping of the atomic bombs on both Nagasaki and Hiroshima. In a matter of seconds, 80,000 people died out of 140,000 who died mercilessly slower. And this was not over a military facility. In fact, school children had just been let out of school in their smart uniforms and their playful gait, but not to be playful for long, because many of them too suffered the melting of their skin. And for those less lucky who survived longer, they were pleading for water because the burning heat made them so thirsty. But it happens that because of what was in the air, according to the doctors, water was the worst thing for their throats, and it had to be refused. So just imagine, just for a second, because longer than that is too long, but imagine your child suffering so, begging for water, and you had to refuse them and witness their anger, their shock and disappointment at your refusal of sometimes their last dying wish. I experienced that look of disappointment and despair from parents in Iraq when I went there with the former US Attorney General Ramsey Clark, visiting a hospital as part of a fact-finding mission after Bush's war on Iraq. I remember very clearly looking into a hospital room where two parents were sitting on the left side of a hospital bed, trying to console their probably about 4-year-old child who was dying a painful death from leukemia. Now, this was due to the use of depleted uranium that was used to bomb civilians in Iraq by the US and NATO. The cancer rate went up 2,000% from 1991 to 1995. But even that statistic doesn't explain what I saw in the eyes of those parents looking at a child they could not comfort. So imagine, just for a second, if that was your child looking at you with disappointing sadness in their eyes, how would you feel? Imagine. So before any of us go brazenly enabling the escalation of a US-led proxy war and sing the praises of Ukrainian President Zelensky as he arms a military led by Nazi battalions in Donbass who killed multiple thousands in Donetsk and Lugansk, we'd better make sure we have our facts straight and also have heard from the voices of truth on the ground. That's what we're doing today. And then ponder the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "The greatest purveyor of violence in the world, my own government." So now I'd like to give the floor to my co-host, Greg Butterfield, who's been following this issue very closely, including visiting the region. So take it away, Greg.
Thank you, John. It's great to see everyone who's here today. So what I'm going to do is give a few opening remarks, and then we'll quickly go over the agenda and start introducing our guests from Donbass and Ukraine. The last few days, President Biden has been at a NATO war conference and shuttling across Eastern Europe, moving closer to direct intervention as NATO floats the idea of sending so-called peacekeepers into Ukraine. What's hidden so much from the people here in the US especially, and also in other parts of the West, is that the war in Ukraine didn't start a month ago when Russia intervened. It started 8 years ago with the far-right coup backed by the United States in Kiev.
Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. I have to leave my
Sharon, you have to mute.
Sorry about that. The war started 8 years ago with the coup in Kiev. It started with repression in the streets of Ukraine, Ukrainian cities. It started with communists, anti-fascists, and people from minority nationalities and language groups being beaten in the street by neo-Nazis. It started with bombing and tanks rolling into the Donbass region where people refused to go along with the coup and declared their independence. And over the last 8 years, Ukraine, with US NATO weapons, has waged war relentlessly on the people there. 14,000 plus dead, a blockade that keeps people hungry, often unable to access medicine and technology that we consider, that we take for granted here. The repression of people's movements in Ukraine. And the Donbass republics have provided a haven and a place to continue their fight to liberate Ukraine for those who could not stay. That all led up to the events of this past February, when, goaded by the US, Ukraine was set to launch a new deadly invasion of Donbass. This is why Russia intervened at the request of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, as well as to defend their own sovereignty against the threat of NATO coming right to their border by taking over Ukraine. The people of Donbass are never allowed a voice in the Western corporate media. If they're mentioned at all, it's only to be called Russian separatists or Putin's proxies. You wouldn't think that there were actual real living people, families, workers in Donetsk and Lugansk, but there are. That's why we believe it's so important to bring some of these voices to the anti-war and workers movement here in the United States. Despite the many, many obstacles that have been thrown up against us, even by Zoom, which is not allowing folks in Donbass to connect directly right now. And so we've come up with a workaround that hopefully will allow folks to speak to you today. Silencing the people of Donetsk and Lugansk, silencing the political exiles from Ukraine is one of the ways that the US controls the narrative and portrays its Ukrainian puppet regime as the victim of bad Russians. But the truth is, the Western imperialists care nothing about the Ukrainian people. They've been allowed to be trampled underfoot, repressed by neo-Nazis, and ravaged by austerity measures for the last 8 years. To them, the working class in Ukraine and Donbass is just cannon fodder to achieve their goal of turning Russia into a neo-colony from which to extract resources and cheap labor, and as a staging ground for war against China. The witch hunt that's going on today, we'll hear more about soon. But we want to especially draw attention to the cases of the many left-wing activists and journalists who have been jailed, beaten, tortured in the last few weeks, like the Kononovich brothers, who are leaders of the Young Communist League in Ukraine, and Alexander Matyushenko. So with that, let me just quickly go over the agenda. And again, let me emphasize, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants technologically here, because we're doing a workaround to get around the blockage of Zoom in Donbass. So the speakers in the order we hope to have them, first is Maria, a left-wing activist from the Ukrainian city of Dnepropetrovsk, partner of political prisoner Alexander Matyushenko. We have Christina Melnikova, a journalist who has covered Ukraine's war on Donbass for several years. She's currently in the capital of Donetsk and has been covering the recent attacks by the Ukraine on the city. ALEXEY ALBU, coordinator of Borotba, who is currently in Lugansk. Alexey is a survivor of the May 2nd, 2014 massacre at the House of Trade Unions in Odessa and a political refugee from Ukraine. Our journalist Denis Grigoryyuk, who was hoping to be here today, is not able to join us for technical reasons. And also Katya A, co-leader of Aurora Women's Group in Donetsk, is not able to join us today, but we have a statement from her, which we will read it later on. I see also that our comrade Svetlana Licht, also from Aurora in Donetsk, was able to get on, and hopefully she'll say a few words later if she wants to. I also want to welcome, we have speakers from the Black Alliance for Peace and Friends of Socialist China, which will be giving messages of solidarity after the speakers from Donbass. And we want to especially thank our translators, Jane Latova, a Donbass solidarity activist from Moscow, and Leonid from the Red Square Molotov Club. And special thanks also to our comrade Sharon Black in Baltimore, who is maestroing the whole technical situation. So we really are thankful to her efforts. So with that, I'd like to introduce Maria, if she's ready to speak.
Greg,
Yes.
are you able to see? Okay, because there's a lot of difficulties, people. Bear with us, because now people can hear me and they can hear you.
Yep.
And so Alexey, if people get on now, we can hear you.
While we're waiting, people stay in touch, because on April 2nd, we have a lot of activities going on. And so keep in touch and let's keep the solidarity going.
So far, I see on the screen. Oh, good. Alexey's up. Yay, Alexey.
Okay, Alexey's here. Alexey from Borotba.
Hello, dear comrades. Nice to meet you.
Alex,
Please go ahead.
Greg, you go ahead and introduce people, and we'll just have to do the best we can in terms of we're sharing the screen. I think everyone on the webinar can see folks, but we're dealing with two different meshing Telegram with Zoom. So go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Alexey. Thank you.
And then later on, they take it back and say, oh, well, our information was wrong. Meanwhile, 500,000 children died in Iraq as a result of the lie.
Let me see how I can do that. I actually took the share screen down, but let me see. I think they just have to, what they have to do is unmute themselves, and because they're already invited, everyone's invited. There's nothing else that I can really do.
Okay, so.
Okay, who else? Wait a second. Who else were you saying? Say that again.
Maria, Mashka, and Christina.
I have Mashka is online and Christina's online.
Okay.
They're both on. And Michael.
Masha, are you ready to speak?
Now let me. What I have to do is then go back to sharing the screen. If people can put their video on. People on Telegram? You're able to speak now. All you have to do is unmute. Greg?
Yeah,
I have everybody's, Mashka, Michael, Jane, and Seaman are up. They've been invited, and I think it's only one person. And I hear people, but I don't know why.
Товарищи, а нас слышно? Кто-то готов из вас начать?
We need our translator to translate.
I'm just trying to find out who is ready to begin.
Oh,
Most likely our friends are not connected very well. I also lost connections a minute ago. Most likely they are not having connection. That's the point. Светлана, Света, вы на связи?
Yeah, apparently they can't hear us for some reason.
Apparently not. That's the point. If they could hear us, they could respond.
we can hear you.
Hello?
Folks on your end in Donbass. Those of
Yeah,
us
there's
who can hear everything.
they're saying they can't hear anything.
Okay, is it?
Jane, can we ask one of them to begin speaking, even if they can't hear what we're saying?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that.
Thank you.
Because they're saying they don't understand what's going on, they can't hear anyone, and it feels like they're talking into an emptiness.
I know, but they're not. They're actually talking to a bunch of people.
Yeah, perhaps they can't, we're not hearing them.
So do us. We do not hear nothing yet, but there is some, as I understand, there is chat in Telegram. Женя, вы владеете там чатом с Телеграма? Там я увидел, тут возникло от Маши что-то. Она не может услышать или не может речь передать. Apparently, they cannot be connected for now.
Greg, maybe we can play the video that Lyosha has recorded, and then me and Leonid can translate what we can from that. Maybe we should do that.
Good idea. Sharon, can you play the video from Alexei that I sent you?
Okay, you sent that video to me. I'm going to have to stop share because I'm going to have to share that in a different screen, okay?
Okay.
Word.
Again, we apologize for all of the technical difficulties.
It's like,
Can you try the StreamYard maybe next time?
Which one?
StreamYard, do you know?
Yeah.
And then you can broadcast too. Oh, I will write you after this.
yeah, I'm very familiar with StreamYard. Okay.
People say that there is a possibility to make such a conversation in Telegram as well. I never tried this. We use only Zoom in the club, but maybe Telegram helps better. We will try it maybe very soon. But for now, we cannot hear. We will try again. Ask somebody. Алексей Дмитриевич, ты слышишь нас? Светлана, как слышимость?
Это Кристина.
I have the,
Кристина! Наконец-то.
I have the video. Do you want me to go ahead and show that?
Yeah, sure. I think we can do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
К проблеме Донбасса, но я не знаю, какие вопросы вы хотели бы мне задать на случай, если не будет связи, но сейчас очень тяжело.
Женя, вы переведете Кристину или как
как
мы с ней? Я вообще не слышу
артиллерии.
ничего.
Город каждый день находится под огнем, и столица республики, и Донецк, и другие города, такие как Горловка, Макеевка, Ясиноватая, они находятся под огнем украинской артиллерии, и сообщения о раненых поступают ежедневно. Особенно много раненых на освобождаемых армией ДНР территориях. Больше всего сейчас раненых среди мирных жителей в Мариуполе. Вместе с тем сохраняется угроза и для Донецка. Здесь тоже регулярно бывают погибшие, регулярно бывают раненые. И в настоящее время происходит передвижение линии фронта, то есть она уходит постепенно от Донецка. Силы ДНР освобождают Марьинку, освобождают Авдеевку. Все эти годы украинские военные укреплялись
Sorry, no sound from no there.
в населенных пунктах. Причем укрепились очень серьезно, как рассказывают мне военные ДНР, у которых я буквально несколько дней назад была в гостях на линии фронта. Они обнаруживают окопы, которые залиты бетоном, окопы, траншеи, блиндажи залиты бетоном, которые очень сложно отбивать. В связи с этим, конечно, достаточно сложно продвигаться донбасским военным, но тем не менее продвижение вперед уверенно. И вот сегодня сообщалось о том, что на том же Марьинском направлении была взята господствующая высота, где находился наблюдательный пункт и огневая позиция украинских военных, откуда они все эти годы обстреливали поселок Александровка и Рудовские. Самым страшным, наверное, самая страшная трагедия не только за...
I'm pausing so that our translator can translate. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. Leonid, do you want to start or do I start?
You see, dear friends, I almost could hear a couple of words from what passed. I don't know. Женя, вы слышали что-то?
Да.
Пожалуйста, я ничего почти не слышал. Два слова только: господствующая высота и все.
Okay,
Больше ничего.
I will begin the translation of that piece, and then we will move on. Maybe Leonid or Greg, you can add something if I lost. So Christina has been working, like Greg said, for the last few years in the Donetsk region, and now she's also there. She's been covering the news, and the points that she made were that heavy shelling of Donetsk People's Republic continues. There are wounded people every day among the civilians. There are deaths of civilians also. And I think this is very important that you guys get to hear about this, because this is something that is not covered in the Western media. She's saying that the most civilian casualties are happening in the territories that are being freed by the army of Donetsk People's Republic in Mariupol, the city of Mariupol. But in spite of this, the operation continues and the front line keeps being pushed. That's what I caught so far.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start again.
Регулярно бывают раненые, и в настоящее время происходит передвижение линии фронта, то есть она уходит постепенно от Донецка. Силы ДНР освобождают Марьинку, освобождают Авдеевку. Все эти годы украинские военные укреплялись в этих населенных пунктах. Причем укрепились очень серьезно, как рассказывают мне военные ДНР, у которых я буквально несколько дней назад была в гостях на линии фронта. Они обнаруживают окопы, которые залиты бетоном, траншеи, блиндажи.
I stopped so you could translate.
Леонид, можете перевести вот этот кусочек?
Вы знаете, я ничего не слышу, ни одного звука вообще. Я ничего не услышал. I could hear nothing, I'm sorry. Could hear no sound whatsoever.
I translated this part mostly. Let's move forward with the video.
Okay, no problem.
Залиты бетоном, которые очень сложно отбивать. В связи с этим, конечно, достаточно сложно продвигаться донбасским военным, но тем не менее продвижение вперед уверенно. И вот сегодня сообщалось о том, что на том же Марьинском направлении была взята господствующая высота Щуровский террикон, где находился наблюдательный пункт и огневая позиция украинских военных, откуда они все эти годы обстреливали поселок Александровка и Трудовские. Самым страшным, наверное, самой страшной трагедией не только за эти последние дни войны, недели войны, но и за, в принципе, все 8 лет войны стал прилет точки У в центр города. Точку У успели сбить, но она бросила кассетные, как мы знаем, запрещенные боеприпасы. Часть этих боеприпасов она успела разбросать по центру города, и от этого погибло несколько десятков людей. 21 человек погибший и более 30 раненых. Это было, конечно, страшное зрелище, поскольку это абсолютный центр города, там рядом находится Национальный университет Донецка, там находится ясли-сад и остановка общественного транспорта. Опять же, ходит несколько маршрутов общественного транспорта, в том числе автобусных маршрутов и троллейбусных. И в это время как раз один автобус попал.
Yes.
Леонид, вам также не слышно?
Вы знаете, я услышал только продвижение на Марьинском направлении. Больше я ничего не услышал, ни капельки. I'm sorry, dear friends. Something technical issue happened. I only could hear 3 words in Russian. Nothing else.
Okay,
Just
I heard.
Situation.
I can still hear what Christina is saying, and she was saying that the biggest tragedy of the last few days, as you maybe heard, was the rocket that fell in the center of Donetsk. I'm not good with military terms, sorry, but there were over 30 civilians killed and 20 wounded, and it's right in the middle of the city. There is a library next to it, and there's a lot of public transportation going around, and that happened just 2 weeks ago, maybe 10 days. Let's continue
with the video.
Let's play further.
Okay.
Под обстрел, и там было много погибших. Опять же, там стояли люди в очереди, в банкомат снимали деньги, в основном пенсионеры, и тоже кассетных боеприпасов упал возле банкомата, и там было очень много жертв. Буквально через несколько дней снаряд прилетел в центр Донецкого, украинский снаряд, естественно, в центр Донецкого микрорайона Текстильщик. В разгар дня, когда люди шли на работу в 8 утра. Не в разгар дня, прошу прощения, а в 8 утра, когда люди просто выходили на работу, и погибли женщины, 4 женщины в результате этой атаки умерли. Одна из них возле своей машины, она собиралась поехать на работу. 2 женщины, сотрудницы республиканского рынка, как раз они выполняли свои должностные обязанности и с кассовыми аппаратами шли на обелечивание, когда их застигла украинская ракета. Это не единственное, жертв было очень много, уже сбиваешься со счета, потому что и в Ясиноватой были погибшие, и на Петровке были погибшие от попадания украинских снарядов. И единственное, что может радовать, после того, как армия ДНР освободит эти территории, которые освобождаются сейчас, то город будет в безопасности, и по городу прекратятся обстрелы, которые продолжаются уже 8 лет.
Let's stop here.
Люди, которые выходят из Мариуполя,
Thank you. So she was saying that a few days after that tragedy, there was another rocket to a working area of Donetsk. It was at 8 a.m. in the morning, the time when people go to work. And then 4 women were killed. They were workers of the market. They were going to do their jobs that day. And then she was saying, Christina, that the good point is that the more territories are freed by the Donetsk People's Republic Army, the less shelling happens. Let's continue.
Беженцы, которые уходят из Мариуполя, из Волновахи, они рассказывают о том, как над ними издевались украинские военные. То есть очень много историй, как людей использовали в качестве живого щита. То есть одна из показательных историй, которую я писала и снимала эту историю, это больница Волновахи. То есть больницу Волновахи, несколько верхних этажей этой районной больницы заняли украинские военные, оборудовав там позицию. Больница находится на высоте, и им было удобно. Они оттуда видели всю линию фронта и занимали верхние этажи. В то время как на первом этаже и в подвале находились мирные люди, пациенты этой больницы и доктора. Этим людям запрещали выходить, выходы заминировали и использовали их фактически как заложников. После того, как украинские военные были...
Let's stop here, this is important. Thank you. So now Christina was recently in contact with refugees from Mariupol and Volnovakha, and she is saying that these people report about the cruelty of the Ukrainian army, and she's bringing up an example of a hospital in Volnovakha where the top floors were occupied by the Ukrainian military, and then patients and doctors were pretty much locked in the basement, and they wouldn't let them go. They were kept as hostages. Yeah, let's continue.
Из этой больницы они зачем-то нанесли удар из танка, то есть по больнице, где находились в том числе мирные люди, они нанесли удар из танка, и об этом говорят, то есть об этом говорят все те, с кем я общалась в этой больнице, в том числе главный доктор. То есть, как люди считают, что это месть, то есть они всегда чувствовали, многие говорят, что чувствовали себя практически как в оккупации, и считают, что украинские военные таким образом, уходя из этих городов, просто мстят мирному населению. В том числе мстят за то, что жители всех вот этих освобождаемых городов в 2014 году проголосовали на референдуме за независимость от Украины. Опять же,
Let's make a pause here. She's saying, I think that this is an important point, that the Ukrainian army, the military, see such situations with the civilians as a revenge for people who voted for independence from Ukraine in 2014, and they're trying to create as many civilian casualties as they can, as they're being forced out by Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic's armies. Let's continue.
В Волновахе люди рассказывали о том, как в многоквартирном районе, то есть это район, где не частный сектор, а многоквартирные дома, многоэтажки. И жители этих многоэтажек говорили, что украинские военные, украинские танки прятались. Здравствуйте, друзья, спасибо за внимание к проблеме Донбасса. Но я не знаю, какие вопросы вы хотели бы мне задать на случай, если не связи,
Okay, can you stop for a second? This is playing from the beginning for some reason now. So Christina stopped somewhere and then it went from the beginning.
Yeah, something happened. Let me try it again.
Это месть. То есть они всегда чувствовали, многие говорят, что в 2014 году проголосовали на референдуме за независимость от Украины. Опять же, в той же самой Волновахе люди рассказывали о том, как в многоквартирном районе, то есть это район, где не частный сектор, а многоквартирные дома, многоэтажки. И жители этих многоэтажек говорили, что украинские военные, украинские танки прятались за
It just stopped on its own. I think that's the end.
Okay, yeah, her point in the end was that the Ukrainian army uses such tactic. They're putting their tanks in highly populated areas where they have buildings with a lot of flats, and they're putting the tanks behind these buildings so that they're using the buildings and the civilians in them as a human shield. And this is a tactic I heard they used in 2014 and 15 in Donetsk. So they keep doing it. I'm sorry about my translation, very nervous, and also these are things which are difficult to hear.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to end that sharing of that.
Sharon, can you now play the video, the other video I sent you from Christina, the footage of Donbass? Do you see that?
John is muted. I can check to see if we've got any luck in that Telegram group.
Or maybe we can play Lёшa's video now.
Yes. We also have a video message from ALEXEY ALBU, which fortunately he recorded ahead of time.
Okay.
So Sharon, whenever you're ready to
Okay.
put up a video.
And John has the other video?
No, I sent them all to you.
Oh, okay. Then let me check. I apologize. Okay. Okay, I will.
Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи. Меня зовут Алексей Албу, я представляю объединение «Боротба». Я благодарен вам за приглашение, за возможность выступить, рассказать о том, что происходит сегодня на Донбассе и на Украине, и дать свои оценки происходящим событиям. Прежде всего, я хочу сказать, что...
You want
Yeah, I can translate this part, or maybe Leonid, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Finally, I can hear the sound.
Very good.
Alexey is very grateful for the opportunity to speak in front of comrades, and foremost, he can speak about something. And please continue the video.
Okay.
С момента начала специальной военной операции, что касается Луганской Народной Республики, жизнь очень изменилась. Прекратились террористические акты, прекратились обстрелы городов и поселков, и практически 90% территории ЛНР на данный момент освобождено.
There in Lugansk People's Republic, the life has changed very much, and the shellings of the cities and towns have been stopped, and terror actions have been stopped.
Я помню, как украинская сторона несколько месяцев очень активно стягивала вооруженные силы к границам ЛНР и ДНР. Мы неоднократно обращали внимание на то, что в феврале на территории, на той части ЛНР и ДНР, которая была оккупирована украинскими войсками, было собрано более 120 тысяч военных. Тяжелая артиллерия, были сосредоточены ракеты, были подготавливались.
Ukrainian Kiev regime tried to place as many of their forces near to the Lugansk People's Republic borders of that days. And he remembers very much that in these days, when it happened during January and February of this year, they tried to bring attention of public from everywhere about the fact that regime of Kiev brings more and more of offensive type of forces and weapons onto the closest line towards Lugansk People's Republic.
Военные склады, свозились горюче-смазочные материалы. Это все говорило о том, что Украина готовится начать нападение. И теперь мы видим, как 90% территории ЛНР уже освобождено. Когда ситуация обострилась и когда в Луганске начали взрываться автомобили, газопроводы, свидетелем которых вот этих взрывов и я был в том числе, когда ситуация обострилась, руководство приняло решение организовать эвакуацию мирных жителей из опасных районов республики, в том числе и из Луганска. Моя семья выехала из ЛНР в тот же день, когда была объявлена эвакуация.
The situation came to the point when the army and the Nazi formations and regiments of Azov and all of the rest of Nazi, so to say, organizations brought towards the closest points to Lugansk and other places of Lugansk People's Republic, their storage of artillery shells, artillery charges, and fuel for their armored vehicles, and etc. This was apparent situation to prepare for the major assault. And at this point, the people of republics, in this case, we speak about Lugansk People's Republic, they start to evacuate their families abroad towards the safe places.
Однако уже 4 марта они смогли вернуться, потому что военные ЛНР, народная милиция ЛНР при поддержке вооруженных сил Российской Федерации сумели отогнать националистов на много километров от Луганска. Где-то начиная с 12 приблизительно марта началась практически мирная жизнь в городе, начали работать школы. Однако, как мы видим, не все так радужно в нашей братской соседней республике, Донецкой Народной Республике. Мы видим, что линия фронта подходит очень близко к Донецку, и жители Донецка до сих пор страдают от постоянных обстрелов, так же, как и страдают жители Горловки, Макеевки и других городов. И все мы стали...
Of about 4 of March, everyone who evacuated abroad could have come back successfully because the peaceful life came back into Lugansk People's Republic, since the militia of Lugansk People's Republic, with support of some forces of Russian Federation, could have pushed back those Nazis and the nationalistic forces of Kiev government towards the line. From there they cannot shell the towns and cities and villages of Lugansk area. But the situation in the area of Donetsk is not so good, because there the army forces of the regime of Kiev is much stronger and bigger in number, and they keep shelling greater and bigger cities in the area of Donetsk and Donetsk itself.
Очевидцами той ужасной трагедии, когда украинские военные пошли на очередное военное преступление и выстрелили, запустили ракету .У, которая является достаточно тяжелым оружием, запустили по мирному городу Донецку. Погибло, как вы знаете, более 20 человек, очень многие были ранены. И после этого случая руководство Луганской Народной Республики приняло решение прекратить обучение в школах, чтобы не подвергать жизни детей опасности. Сегодня наши дети занимаются дистанционно. Но, в принципе, можно сказать, что процесс денацификации и демилитаризации на территории Луганской Народной Республики проходит очень успешно. Что касается всей специальной военной операции в Украине, то в целом я тоже оцениваю...
So what happened then in Donetsk? There was terror attacks by the regime of Kiev by very strong missiles with great explosive capacity, like for instance an attack onto Donetsk, straight into the center of city, which killed at once 23 people there in the streets. Because of this type of attacks from the regime of Kiev, Lugansk People's Republic have temporarily stopped the attendance of the children to schools. Now children learn in schools distantly. But in any case, this situation, we hope, is going to be also, so to say, overcome. We must overcome this situation as well. Please continue.
Его ход достаточно положительно. Во-первых, если смотреть на первоначальный этап операции, то все обозначенные цели были достигнуты. Значит, первая и главная цель – это было обезопасить границы Российской Федерации. Если мы посмотрим практически на любую карту, которую дают военные эксперты, мы увидим, что граница России и Украины, она практически полностью, вот эта зона, которая близко прилегает к ней, практически полностью освобождена. Начиная от севера Украины, от села Сеньковка, заканчивая Крымом, то есть, получается, вооруженные силы Украины были отодвинуты от границ России. То есть эта задача была выполнена. Следующая задача, которая была очень важная на первом этапе войны, это задача по взятию под контроль стратегических объектов, таких как Чернобыльская атомная электростанция, Запорожская атомная электростанция, которая находится в городе Энергодар, и Южноукраинская атомная электростанция на севере Николаевской области. Мы видим, что две из них, Чернобыльская и Запорожская атомная электростанция, были взяты под контроль. Там установлен нормальный порядок.
The issue for today is such that in talking about the achievements of this operation against the regime of Kiev, the goals have been achieved for the stage of beginning, so to say, because as you see on the borders of Ukraine, the forces of the regime of Kiev are pushed back deeper into the country, so they are not threat now, neither to Lugansk People's Republic, Donetsk People's Republic, Russia and Belarus. They are now deeper back in the country, there in Ukraine, towards the center of the country and westwards. So they cannot do much of artillery towards opponents, but in several points in Donetsk People's Republic, they are still present into the range of artillery to allow them to shell much into the city of Donetsk and other places like Gorlovka and Makeyevka.
Процесс по выработке электроэнергии идет в штатном плановом режиме, без эксцессов. То есть мы уверены, что на этих объектах не произойдет никакой провокации. Однако южноукраинская атомная электростанция до сих пор не была освобождена, потому что фронт еще пока не дошел до этой точки. Также из важных инфраструктурных объектов следует отметить дамбу, которая регулировала поступление воды в Северокрымский канал. Теперь Крым обеспечен водой, которая идет из Днепра по старым сооружениям, которые были построены в советское время. Вот. Также важной целью было взятие под контроль одной из лабораторий, биологических лабораторий.
So another great object which was achieved by this present day operation in Ukraine against the power of the regime of Kiev, it was security of the atomic power stations, nuclear power stations. The biggest of them was nuclear power station near city of Zaporozhye in the town which is called Energodar. And several of those atomic nuclear power stations are now secured by the forces of Ukrainian opposition and Russian Federation together as forces of such a alliance. There are about 2 of them left westwards in the west of Ukraine, near to town of Rovno or Rivne and near to town of Khmelnytsky. But the rest of nuclear power stations are very much secured by now.
Находится на Украине. Как известно, их было несколько. В срочном порядке они начали уничтожать документы, вывозить, заметать следы. Однако очень большое количество документов и материалов, свидетельствующих о преступной деятельности на этих лабораториях, было получено вооруженными силами Российской Федерации. И это очень важная цель, которая тоже была достигнута в ходе специальной военной операции. И четвертая важная цель, конечно, это уничтожение основной группировки противника, которая находится на Донбассе.
Another important point of this ongoing operation was to discover the what is called biological research laboratories settled by some foreign powers in Ukraine. Somebody said it is of USA. Somebody said it is of England origin. And these biological weapons, apparently, laboratories which produce a type of combat viruses, now they are discovered and documentation there partially secured. It means there are proofs what these laboratories did before, and there are about 15 of them throughout Ukraine. Some of them are already captured by the approaching forces of Ukrainian opposition with the help of Russian Federation.
Министерство обороны России озвучило приблизительные потери украинской стороны. Это около 14 тысяч убитых и около 16 тысяч раненых и взятых в плен. Я думаю, приблизительно эти цифры верны. То есть, если они и разнятся, то не принципиально. Плюс нужно сказать, что каждый день уничтожаются националисты, попадают в плен, погибают и получают ранения. Поэтому угроза, которая исходила от националистов, с каждым днем становится все меньше, несмотря на оголтелую пропаганду. Что касается моего родного города, Одессы, настроение там сложное. Некоторые люди, которые придерживались наших левых антифашистских взглядов, сегодня поменяли свою позицию, потому что они воспринимают это как акт агрессии со стороны России.
Talking about casualties of this ongoing conflict, you see, the civil war has a very cruel development. It is not a very pleasant situation of this ongoing civil war, including the present day involvement of Russian Federation. The scale of casualties went high. For instance, for Ukrainian army, it is counted for about 40,000 of casualties, and of course many wounded. Most likely, in about less than this number are casualties of the approaching forces of Ukrainian opposition, forces of republics, and forces of Russian Federation. But we cannot count it exactly. For now, it's not possible to count exactly. But nevertheless, the tragedy is in higher scale, as it was in other civil wars. For instance, civil war of Spain. Then Republican Spain tried to defend itself from the approaching fascist rebels, and it failed. And another civil wars. So the situation for now is yet not finished on both ends. Talking about the native city, so to say, city of origin of our friend Alexei, city of Odessa, he must admit the situation there is not certain, so to say. Please continue there.
Объясняется очень просто, объясняется шоковым состоянием от первых дней войны и объясняется тем, что фактически эти люди вышли из зоны комфорта. То есть им было удобно быть левыми и антифашистами, не участвуя в этих процессах. А когда этот процесс коснулся их, эти люди оказались очень мягкими и поменяли свою позицию. Однако меня радует, что очень большое количество одесситов не поменяли своих убеждений, своих взглядов и относятся к националистическим властям крайне враждебно. Ни один из призывов националистов выходить на улицы, выходить и бросаться под российские танки и оказывать сопротивление не был услышан, если говорить о массовом характере. Да, единицы, какие-то, может быть, десятки человек откликаются, но массово Одесса проигнорировала призывы националистов, и это очень важно. Я уверен, что в ближайшем будущем мы увидим, что основная группировка националистов на Донбассе будет уничтожена, и фронт пойдет дальше освобождать другие города и поселки Украины от коричневой чумы 21 века. Товарищи, я вам хочу сказать большое спасибо за солидарность, за проявленный интерес к данной теме. И хочу сказать, что перед нами всеми стоит общий враг. Это империалистическая система. Она не дает жить и не дает дышать всем народам планеты. И нам всем вместе, простым людям, нужно объединиться для того, чтобы бороться.
А Женя, вы остановили, пусть до конца уже дойдет.
Это не я останавливаю. Let's keep playing the video to the end, and then Leonid will make the...
Против империализма.
Let's keep playing.
Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи. Того, чтобы бороться против империализма. Но пасаран.
Pasaran.
That's it.
So Sharon, Carlos is going to have to leave. So we wanted to see if we can get him in first. Is that possible?
Yeah, I just stopped sharing and then we can share the film.
Good. Okay. So next, Carlos Martinez. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay, Joe?
Carlos, how are you? Carlos is from the UK, from the Friends of Socialist China, and we're very happy to have him give a solidarity message. Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you so much. And I'm here today. I've got a few hats that I wear, and today the hat that I'm wearing is that of the International Manifesto Group, which is a group of radical anti-imperialists aiming to develop a collective understanding of global events. And if you want to find out more about the Manifesto Group, then have a look on the website internationalmanifesto.org. So thank you so much. It's a great honor to be with you here today. I'm here to learn, and I don't want to take up much of your time, but I would just like to deliver a short message of solidarity. We want to congratulate the organizers and participants of this very important and really unique event. As the people of Donbass continue to suffer under the weight of physical onslaught by NATO-backed neo-Nazi paramilitaries, news of their struggle is systematically suppressed in the West, and it has been for 8 years. We face a barrage of propaganda which is designed to win public support for a US-led imperialist project which seeks first and foremost to prevent the emergence of a multipolar world. According to this propaganda, the coup government in Ukraine stands at the heart of some sort of thriving democracy. There's never any mention of the vicious war on Donetsk and Lugansk, of daily shellings, of neo-Nazi paramilitaries, of the suppression of the Russian language, or the banning of communist parties. And all efforts to counter this propaganda and to give voice to the victims of imperialist and fascist aggression are very welcome and constitute an important and valuable contribution to our shared global struggle. So again, we thank you, we congratulate you, we wish you every success, and we look forward to working with you in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we'll keep going on with the video.
Это точка У, да?
So this is the video of the rocket that hit in the center of the net.
Это точка У, да? Это точка У сбита, да?
Greg, or if a translator, if anybody wants me to stop and to discuss who shot the film and what this film is about.
Basically, this is the footage made by Christina soon after that rocket fell. And it just shows how, like, this is the center of the city, a very lively place. Right now, you can see there's a wedding shop and it's shelled. You can see the wall. But I don't think this needs
Right.
much commenting.
Попало мирное население. Во предыдущих оценках 9 человек погибло, 80 получили ранения. По бульвару Пушкина 34 тормознули на 200.
This is the memorial of the place with the rocket fell, where people kept bringing flowers on the following days.
Yeah, that video was shot by Christina Melnikova on March 14th, which is when the Ukrainian missile hit downtown Donetsk, the capital city. The missile would have caused much more damage and more lives. It was shot down by the air defense of the Republic, but unfortunately, one of the cluster munitions attached to the missile survived and exploded in the street. Cluster munitions are banned under international law, and that was a war crime that Ukraine committed with US assistance. And similar attacks have been, taken place both in and around the capital and in other parts of Donetsk over the last 2 weeks. And, just to emphasize, although this was definitely an escalation, these kinds of attacks have not been unusual over the last 8 years. And it's important for people here to understand that when the US is trying to portray, Russia's intervention in Ukraine as something that just came out of nowhere. It's not. They're trying to help end a war that's been going on for 8 years. So I think, John, probably if our Black Agenda,
Yeah, it's
Black Alliance for Peace speaker is ready, we can do that,
great
and then
minds think
we'll
alike.
open up for questions and comments if any of the speakers are now able to get on and answer questions. That would be great.
Yeah, Jacqueline, how you doing? I was texting you to see if you were we were good on time, but it would be great if you can go now. Jacqueline's from the Black Alliance for Peace. I was going to give the solidarity statement. And Black Alliance for Peace has been one of the organizations that have consistently had an anti-imperialist, very, educating our anti-war movement about the things that they need to be stressing in this crisis that may turn into World War III. So thanks, Jacqueline, for being here.
Thank you so much for having us here at this very important event, and thank you for organizing this, particularly amid all of the clear repression that is going on. So the Black Alliance for Peace is a people-centered human rights organization that works to recapture and redevelop the historic anti-war, anti-imperialist, and pro-peace positions of the radical Black movement. So we oppose both militarized domestic state repression and the policies of destabilization, subversion, and the permanent war agenda of the US state globally, because we recognize that they are inextricably connected. We believe it speaks volumes that the voices of the working class people in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions are being silenced, as we see it happening, by the global big technology companies that are in league with the imperialist intelligence apparatus of the US, EU, NATO axis of domination, denying regular people in the besieged regions in Ukraine the targets of an 8-year civil war that was not reported on in US media at all, the ability to tell their story to the rest of the world through this Zoom webinar. As this conflict unfolded, we in the US, what many of us call the belly of the beast or the beating heart of US imperialism, because this is where the policies and the money for war come from, watch the State Department controlled media outlets, the CNNs, MSNBCs, NPRs, and even Fox News, feverishly spin a narrative of a crazed Vladimir Putin carrying out an unprovoked attack upon Ukraine. What the mouthpieces of US imperialism, of course, never mentioned were the 2014 US NED, National Endowment for Democracy funded coup, the neo-Nazis integrated into the Ukrainian army, the desire of the people in those regions to be independent of Ukraine and recognized as independent republics, and the 8-year civil war against the mostly ethnic Russian people in those regions in response. As we anti-imperialists were among the few who raised these issues as they occurred in 2014 and beyond, we remain the few voices of dissent shouting the truth into the void of imperialist warmongering in the US and the West today. And for this, our content is removed. We're tagged as disinformation. Journalists such as myself who work for Sputnik News have our content tagged as Russian state-sponsored media, and we're under threat of further repression. But this is typical of the US response to the voices of anti-imperialism, particularly Black radical anti-imperialists challenging the approved narrative of liberal patriot excuses for yet another unjust proxy war. What they don't want us to do is exactly what we're doing now, making international connections between working class communities to express solidarity with the right of one group of people to pursue self-determination without interference from the US and Western powers, because we in the US understand that it's been the policies of the United States and its allies that have denied the self-determination of working people around the world, choosing instead to impose their capitalist will upon those people to exploit and oppress resources and people. So the Black Alliance for Peace stands in solidarity with the people of Donetsk and Luhansk in their pursuit of self-determination. We stand with you against US, EU, and NATO domination, and we wish you freedom and peace. Thank you, organizers, for this event and this opportunity to speak and to be heard by the people in Donetsk and Luhansk. And we say to you, no compromise, no retreat.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for those powerful words. Now I see that there's a few questions and comments and things.
Actually, John, can I?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to share some words from Katya from Donetsk, who was not able to be on because of the technical problems, but she did send some remarks. And so I'm just going to quickly present those. And this is also something we will publish at Struggle Lucha. She says, hello, my name is Katya, and I'm a member of the Aurora Women's Club in Donetsk. We hold cultural and educational events here. I've been living in Donetsk for most of my life. I lived through almost the entire war and the economic blockade. For more than a month, we have been living in a phase of active escalation of the conflict. But I want to note that the escalation of the conflict to one degree or another took place all 8 years of the war. Since 2017, the intensity of shelling has gradually decreased, but people continue to die from artillery shelling, mines, and even from snipers. I'm talking about the civilian population of Donbass. The OSCE report says that in the territories not controlled by Ukraine, that is, the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics, since 2017, 3 times more civilians have suffered from the war than in the controlled ones. I do not take into account how the destruction of infrastructure, residential buildings, and psychological harm also affects the people. At the same time, Ukrainian forces shelled the territory of the DPR and LPR without any military purpose. According to official data, more than 1,600 residential buildings, 400 infrastructure facilities, including hospitals, schools, gas and water supply facilities, have been damaged in the DPR since February 17th this year. The threat of complete disconnection of the Republic from the water supply is still hanging over us. You can imagine what this means in a pandemic. Especially people in frontline areas suffer from this situation. For example, in the Petrovsky district of Donetsk, the shelling is nonstop. In some areas, there is no water supply completely for a long time. This situation places a heavy burden on the shoulders of women who still do most of the housework. Especially people in frontline areas suffer from this situation. For example, in the Petrovsky district of Donetsk, the shelling is going over that again. Our authorities have also been evacuating people since February 17, but many people decided to stay. Many have elderly relatives who find it extremely difficult to make such trips. Some refused to go because they had already experienced the terrible phase of the 2014-2015 war. Some are afraid of the unstable refugee status. We have no problems with food yet, but everything has significantly increased in price. And we're feeling the consequences of the sanctions policy. Important medicines are disappearing from sale. The biggest problem now is the water supply. Otherwise, our workers are trying to fix breakdowns quickly. In February, one of the workers of the gas service was killed due to shelling when he and other colleagues came to repair the consequences of an earlier shelling that had happened. The people of Donbass need peace more than anything else in the world. We've been talking about this for many years. A humanitarian catastrophe has developed in the newly liberated cities. People need the most basic things: food, clean water, medicine. I think the socialists of the Western world should condemn the warmongers. It is necessary to prevent a full-scale NATO intervention in the war. It should be understood that all the weapons that are supplied to Ukraine are used, among other things, against the people of Donbass. It is also necessary to consistently criticize the hypocritical sanctions policy. Such a policy harms the poorest segment of the population. In particular, people in Donbass, against whom the Ukrainian state is waging war, suffer from sanctions. We want to express our gratitude to all our comrades for their solidarity. We admire the struggle of the US workers in the very center of global imperialism. Capitalism brings a lot of grief to the working class, but together we can overcome injustice and build a new world. And those were the remarks that were sent by Katya in Donetsk.
Thanks, Greg, for that. We did have some questions and things, but let's first just briefly go to the solidarity messages that were sent in solidarity. Starting with the Workers' Voice Socialist Movement. The Workers' Voice Socialist Movement from Louisiana salutes the people of the Donbass who have heroically been on the front lines of the fight against fascism. We grieve for the 14,000 lives lost in this long struggle. Workers and oppressed people in the United States, Ukraine, the Donbass, and Russia. As young adults, unemployed, and workers, we salute the people of Donbass in their fight for liberation. We staged a recent protest at the Ukrainian embassy in DC to demand the release of Alexander Kononovich and Mikhail Kononovich, leaders of the Leninist Communist Youth Union of Ukraine, and the end to the terrible repression that is being perpetrated by US imperialism against Donbass. Stop the US-NATO war on Russia and Donbass. That's from the Youth Against War and Racism. And now we have it from the International Action Center. Hearing voices of resistance from the People's Republics of Lugansk and Donetsk is a great need in the US. We salute the heroic resistance of workers' movements in the People's Republic of Luhansk and Donetsk. The war in Ukraine, incited by the US commanded NATO alliance, is a criminal strategy developed over decades to lock into place US corporate domination in Europe. This war is a continuation of the war begun with a US-backed coup in 2014. The armed resistance to this fascist coup by the peoples of the Donbass have been steadfast for these 8 years, despite unrelenting attacks and over 14,000 deaths. We look forward to learning from this resistance. Today's March 27th program will help to counter overwhelming US war propaganda. And that is from In Solidarity, Sarah Flounders, who is from the Basque Country. She says, I would like to call the attention on Basque journalist that Polish Secret Service put in solitary confinement on February 27th in a Polish prison with bogus charges, calling him a Russian spy. He holds a Spanish passport, but Spanish authorities are not helping his situation at all. And we had a question. Let me get to this question from Faramars. Could one of the speakers talk about how ethnic Russians are indigenous in Donbass, including Donetsk and Lugansk, not outsiders or colonizers, and that Ukrainian Nazis are the ones waging not just a war of conquest, but also genocide? So let's take that, whoever wants to take it, and I guess including everyone on here, interpreters and as well. Anybody want to take that on? Or we can think about it and I'll go to the next question. Okay.
I think a lot of the panelists are off now because it's very late. So maybe what we can do is read the questions, and then we'll try to communicate them to them and get responses back.
Right. Okay, that sounds good.
I would add that if I see Leonid just left, but Svetlana is still on, I would love for that question in particular to be answered by someone in that region, because it's one thing for us to sit here and talk about the history of how people came to be in those regions, but I think it is more important to hear from those people in that region and answering questions about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked Lana if you want to go now, or if you want to wait. Can you hear me okay?
I don't think she's able to right now.
Yeah, this is a little bit difficult. So let's go on to the next question. TASS has reported that there may be a referendum in Lugansk about joining the Russian Federation. Is there popular support in the LPR for such a measure? So again, these are questions that we're going to send. And as I think, as Maggie put in the chat, the comments that the panelists who were blocked by the U.S. State Department, their comments are going to be in strugglealucha.org. So you'll be able to see that there. And perhaps we'll also have the answers to these questions in strugglealucha.org as well. Let me just see if I can see some comments too. Here's another comment from Inya. In a recent trial in Spain, the Spanish secret police was ousted as being behind the terrorist attacks in August 2017 that killed 17 people in Barcelona. The Spanish police reasoning was to scare the Catalonian people into submission so that they wouldn't vote for independence in October 2017. A subset of Al-Qaeda was blamed originally for the terror attack that was, as it was convenient for the US Spanish propaganda at that time. That's a comment that's very relevant to today. So I think that's all there are for the comments for now. Let's see if I might have missed something. But I don't think we've gone about an hour and 40 minutes. Considering the technical difficulties, that's not too long, and I'm really glad people were so patient with us. But I think that's all I've got. Greg, have you got anything else?
I just want to also mention again that we're holding demonstrations on both coasts next weekend. Next weekend is the anniversary weekend of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. And, you know, Dr. King was besides his fight for Black liberation at home, was also a tireless fighter against imperialist war in Vietnam and elsewhere. One of the reasons he was assassinated was because he had come out against the US war in Vietnam. And so we think it's very important and appropriate to have demonstrations with clear anti-imperialist demands at this time. You know, as part of our campaign to stop the war lies. And so next Saturday in New York City at 1 o'clock at Herald Square, we'll be having a demonstration. I posted some information on that in the chat. John, do you want to announce when the LA demo?
Yeah, so on April 2nd, next, I believe that's Saturday, April 2nd, we're going to be having a protest flyering as well. We have fact sheets and other things to let folks know about what's going on in Leimert Park. So that'll be April 2nd in Leimert Park. I believe we're going to start at around 12 noon. I think that's when we're, so 12 noon at Leimert Park next Saturday in Los Angeles. And we'll hope as many people can join